Scotty's father. Hello, Scotty.
G'day, how are you, Jim?
Very good, thank you. So your situation these days with Lockie, his older brother still catches the bus and you get in your car and drive him into town?
Yep, that's the one.
Okay. So that hasn't changed?
No, I've been to the bus company and asked again, but whether they throw the card on the desk and throw their arms in the air, I'm not too sure. So,
have you thought of writing to the ministry and asking why you can't pay to have your boy on the bus?
yeah, I've been doing a lot more homework lately as well and seeing a lot of articles, and there is hope one day, I think, but you just got to hit the right person to make the call, I think.
Okay. So each day, each morning, your older boy goes off on the bus and you hop in the car and you do quite a round trip each week, don't you? You rack up the Ks.
Yeah, a couple of 100 Ks, yep.
All right, and I remember you were sending us a picture of a bus with seemingly quite a lot of room on it.
Yeah, good 10 seats there.
Okay. So you're quite happy to pay money and have Lockie get on the bus and go to school?
Yep, more than happy.
All right. And are you going to keep writing to the ministry?
Yep. Tell me a figure and I'll write you a cheque.
Don't offer quite that much to them. They should be helping you anyway.
It's only $1 a day in Golden Bay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we might keep in touch with you about that and see how much success. But when you read about the solutions up north, does it frustrate you?
Oh, absolutely. And it frustrates a lot of other parents too. They're in the same boat as us.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. You know, let's get some cars off the road and the kids to school and get on with it.
All right. All right. We'll stay in touch. Thank you, Scotty. Scotty Mitchell. And the situation hasn't changed for him and his son. What should we talk about before we go? I wouldn't mind asking you about Altair Asset Management in Australia.
Oh, yep. I printed this one out and read it. It's interesting, isn't it?
Called on your expertise greatly today. This Altair Asset Management has made the dramatic decision to liquidate its Australian shares funds and return hundreds of millions of dollars back to its clients, citing an impending property market calamity and the overvalued and dangerous time in this cycle. And the chief investment officer says it's not a winding up of the company, it's a decision to hand back client monies. We think the market's crazy, property's massively overstretched.
So they're not winding everything up, my understanding is they're just giving back the money that they've got invested in Australian shares in the share market because they think there's too many global uncertainties about what's going to happen to it and they don't think it's honest of them to keep investing their clients' money. It's odd. You look at it and you think, wow, good call. If they're really that worried about things, good on them. That said, if they were my fund manager, I'd probably say, well, I pay you to manage that risk and to go invest it in something else. Don't just say, oh, sorry, it's too hard and give me back the money. So you know what I mean? On one hand, that seems like they're being frightfully honourable. Yeah. And on the other hand, I guess I'm cynical. I'm a journalist. Is it just that they're doing that as a big publicity thing so that other people will say, oh, we'll give you money for other funds because you're very honourable?
Because you're very careful. They cite the overheated local property market as the clearest and most present danger. And, of course, immigration's driven in part Australia's housing boom.
Yeah,
too.
that's going off the rails.
I suppose we're mentioning it because it's so dramatic.
What they've done, the fact that they're stopping these investments and things like that, it's going to have big flow-on effects. You've got to have healthy capital markets and have people investing in shares for companies to flourish. It's a huge part of the economy and it's one of the things that we don't have enough money going into it in this country. So I think there's going to be serious implications. But very interesting to watch it.
I know. It's hard to tell whether it's the canary in the coal mine or just some outlying kind of response.
And it's a bit worrying if the fund manager's just a bit scared of the market. So.
Alan Reid, always a pleasure. Thank you for coming in. And James Elliott, you too.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks, Alan.
That is the panel for another day. Thanks for your company, everybody. And Checkpoints with John Campbell coming up now.
Kia ora everyone. Tonight, a damning report by the Auditor General reveals a crisis in mental health, clearly pressures. He says we're going to look at that in depth tonight. More than 50 New Zealand native bird species are at risk of extinction. The iconic Rodeo Cowboy is under threat as the Myrtle Rust outbreak spreads. The Lions have touched down in New Zealand ahead of their 5-week tour. A rodeo cowboy caught abusing animals escapes formal punishment. The government will help pay for young Maori to get their driver's licences. And another victory for Team New Zealand. It really is a busy checkpoint tonight. Thank you for being with us on RNZ National. We will be back after the Pips and Paul with the news.
RNZ News at 5. No mai, haere mai, good afternoon. I'm Paul Brennan. A major fire has broken out at an Auckland recycling site. A huge plume of smoke could be seen from kilometres away. The fire service says 15 crews are responding from across Auckland to the fire at Waitakere Refuge Transfer Station. A spokesperson says a recycling shed covering about 1,500 square metres is well ablaze. Alvin Johnson, who works nearby, says traffic down the road is blocked and the road is full of fire crews and a number of ambulances. The fire service says firefighters are facing dangerous high-tension overhead power lines as they work to battle the blaze. The police are speaking to a large number of witnesses after shots were fired during an armed hold-up of a South Auckland bar. They say 3 men, all wearing disguises and 2 holding guns, walked into Head and Home Bar on Te Rakau Drive in Pakuranga at about 12:30 this afternoon. Eva Corlett reports.
The police say the trio forced the staff and customers inside to lie down on the floor, firing off shots but not hitting anyone before running off with cash in a waiting car. The Police Eagle helicopter and a number of patrol cars were called to search the surrounding area, but the culprits are yet to be found. A forensic examination is underway and witnesses are being spoken to. Anyone with information is being urged to contact the police, potentially for a reward, as part of its month-long stolen goods campaign aimed at tackling aggravated robberies. RNZ News has contacted the bar, but a woman said she had been told not to talk to media. Ko Eva Corlett, tēnei.
The Health Minister says district health boards must make changes to ensure mental health patients are well supported when they leave hospital care. In a report out today, the Auditor-General is calling for urgent major improvements for patients needing acute care. It says some units are overcrowded and patients are being discharged without any plan for their ongoing care. It says this has to change and something has to be done to relieve the pressures on hospital and community services. It adds district health boards are failing to meet a target of following up most patients within a week of them leaving hospital. The Health Minister, Jonathan Coleman, says that's not good enough.
I expect the HBs to provide the right level of discharge planning and the appropriate placement in the communities to meet the needs of the people who they're caring for.
Jonathan Coleman there. Silver Fern Farms says it's offering support to the 370 workers who will lose their jobs when the closure of its sheep meat plant, or with the closure of its sheep meat plant in Ashburton. The company confirmed the closure to the workers at a meeting this afternoon following a 2-week consultation period. The meat company's chief executive, Dean Hamilton, says the decision is due to a significant decline in sheep and lamb numbers over the last 10 years. He says it will try to help the workers find new jobs.
We've got a resource centre opening here tomorrow. We'll be encouraging people to meet with our management from Pariour and Belfast plants. We've got 230 opportunities there. And then next week we're also going to have a job expo day where local Ashburton employers will pitch their alternative offers.
Dean Hamilton says it will continue operating its pelt house from the Fairton site. New evidence shows 80% of the country's native bird species are in bad shape, with some on the brink of extinction. According to a just-released report from the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, 32% of the country's 168 bird species are in serious trouble, 48% are in some trouble, and the remainder are doing okay. Jan Wright is suggesting genetic modification of predators to reduce their numbers and says the government needs to start a public discussion about it. Dr Wright is also recommending a nature border levy and user pays charges for overseas visitors to national parks to help pay for biodiversity protection.
I mean, we do have people staying very, very cheaply on the conservation estate and huts, coming over and living for a fraction of what it would cost to live in their own country. And I don't really understand why we don't do this myself.
The Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, Jan Wright. The head of a penal reform group says a new plan to help young Maori get their driver licence may keep them out of prison. The government will spend $4 million to assist rangatahi to get official documentation like driver's licences and passports. The New Zealand Howard League has helped secure licences for about 500 young people who are on probation for driving offences. Its chief executive, Mike Williams, says 65% of Maori sent to jail for the first time have a driving offence.
If we can get them their licences and point them in the direction of a job, then that heavily reduces the chances of these young people ending up in jail.
Mike Williams there. It's just on 5 minutes past 5. On to sport now. The British and Irish Lions rugby side have arrived to begin their quest to become just the second Lions team to enjoy success on New Zealand soil in 12 attempts. It's 46 years since the famed 1971 Lions enjoyed a 2-1 series win over the All Blacks. The Lions will play 10 tour matches, including 3 tests against all 5 Super Rugby franchises, as well as an unofficial 4th test against the Maori All Blacks. The Lions coach, Warren Gatland, says recovery is the priority over the next couple of days as they prepare for their tour opener against a provincial selection in Whangarei on Saturday.
Today's a recovery day, guys doing a bit of pool recovery and some stretching and stuff, and with a light run tomorrow and then a captain's run on Friday. And a lot of the players for the team for Saturday have been working together over the last couple of weeks, so hopefully they've got a bit of a head start in terms of preparation.
Warren Gatland. Just how much the British team has improved will be tested when they come up against Team New Zealand in the America's Cup qualifying series in Bermuda tomorrow morning. After 4 straight losses, Team BAR beat Sweden today, the same team New Zealand also beat. The British helmsman Ben Ainslie says while they've struggled, the nature of the technologically advanced catamarans means fortunes can change quickly.
It's proven to be a good move. They are really closely matched. Each team in different conditions can be competitive. And that's certainly what we need for the America's Cup, and looking to the future, I think it's got huge potential.
Ben Ainslie's team sits 3rd in the standings behind holders Oracle and Team New Zealand. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, the journalist Phoebe Hogan talks about the subject of her latest book, the artist Jean-Michel Basquiat. All he wanted was fame, apparently. We have a window on the world of Soweto's music, and this week's overseas correspondent Pablo Perez Fernandez is on the line from Brazil, where it seems pretty much every public official is corrupt. On Nights with me, Brian Crump, from after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
And we're funded through New Zealand On Air. Here's the short forecast now, taking us through to midnight tomorrow, Thursday, from Met Service. Northland, Auckland, including Coromandel Peninsula. Showers should ease and retreat to Northland about now. Showers return to Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula tomorrow afternoon. Waikato, Waitomo, Taumarunui, Taupo and Bay of Plenty, fine apart from isolated showers right now, and low cloud or fog tomorrow morning. Fine for Taranaki through to Kapiti, that includes Taihape. Gisborne to Wairarapa, mainly fine for the rest of today, cloudy tomorrow with a few showers. Wellington, cloudy, the odd shower tonight, becoming mainly fine tomorrow afternoon. Buller, Nelson and Marlborough, fine for the rest of today, isolated showers clearing inland in the afternoon tomorrow. Westland, likewise fine today, showers tomorrow though, mainly about the coast. Canterbury to Southland, that includes Fiordland, mostly cloudy with isolated showers. Patchy drizzle develops in North Otago, Dunedin and Clutha. Areas of low cloud or fog morning and night, and for the Chatham Islands, often cloudy with a few showers. It's 8 minutes past 5.
Thanks, Paul. Coming up on Checkpoint, the Auditor General on mental health services. This is a major report. Native birds at real risk and a meaningful response urgently required. Myrtle Rust and the risk it poses to Pohutakawa. And the Lions arrive in New Zealand, the most awaited visitors in global rugby. But very quickly, we begin tonight with breaking news. A major fire has broken out at the Waitakere Refuge Transfer Station. That's west of central Auckland. 15 fire crews are responding from across Auckland. Traffic is blocked and the road is full of fire crews and ambulances. The motorway, the northwestern motorway, is very nearby. The fire services firefighters are facing dangerous high-tension overhead power lines as they work to battle the blaze. Armin works nearby and described to our producer Bridget Burke what he can see.
I just tried to get closer to the scene, and then the cops and they blocked the way basically, so we can't see much. They are getting into the fire transfer station right now, and they're trying to extinguish the fire. The smoke is getting denser and bigger and higher, so it looks pretty serious.
And what kind of buildings are around the transfer station?
There is a factory over there on the side. I mean, the nearest building is a few hundred meters away, so I don't think it's caused any risks. So it should be all right. More trucks are coming over. So the fire is getting, it's like not a black smoke now. It was black at first. Now it's turning kind of white and dense, a really thick one. So I'm not sure what kind of material is burning up.
What does it smell like, Eamon?
No smell yet. We can't smell anything. There is no wind, so all the smoke is going up, straight up to the sky. So, yeah, we can't smell much.
Can you hear fire engines at all?
Yeah, they're coming over, getting close. So I can see a couple trucks in here. They just got in the they basically blocking access to everybody surrounding the place. So, yeah.
Traffic chaos in that direction. Our reporter Jonah McKenzie is on the way, and we will update you the moment more information is available. We will also have traffic reports for people who are stuck on that motorway or are planning to head in that direction. We turn now to mental health and the Auditor General's report into what happens when patients are discharged from hospital or inpatient care. In parts, it is highly critical. I quote, "There are clearly pressures on parts of the mental health system that demand urgent attention." The report found that, and again I quote, "all DHBs consistently fail to meet the target to follow up with people." That, quote, "poor availability of suitable accommodation, especially for people with complex needs, is the largest barrier people face." And, quote, "the lack of suitable accommodation can mean that vulnerable people are living in loosely regulated and unsupported environments." Here's our health correspondent, Karen Brown.
The report focuses on those people with acute mental health problems who need hospital care and support. It says some hospital units are overcrowded, and that means some people are discharged without a follow-up plan. As a result, people fail to connect quickly with services they need and sometimes end up back in hospital. The Assistant Auditor General, Mike Scott, says the system isn't working as it should.
There are obstacles to this currently being done well. There are pressures which mean that discharge planning is not being done as well as it should be, in our view. And that's not just a health issue. It's an issue which involves the Ministry of Health, DHBs and other agencies.
The report says the plans for patients leaving hospital often don't include essential support like suitable housing, financial help and what to do if arrangements break down. Mike Scott says families and community groups are also often not consulted.
We heard in some cases when they're discharged, they are discharged to accommodation which is not ideal for them, and they don't have access to, employment and education support to help them in getting a job and, helping them to live well in the community.
As well, no DHB has ever met the target of providing a follow-up visit within a week to 90% of those discharged.
They're not meeting that target. They're falling well short of it in some cases. They know that, and I think, they are seeking to improve things.
The Public Service Association says people are being hustled back into the community as quickly as possible because others need the beds. The National Secretary, Erin Polachuk, says it backs what its members have been saying about services under growing strain.
Too many in the acute units, there's too many in the inpatient units. They're pushing them back out into the community, and then of course there's pressure in the community services as well. So the whole system needs a review.
She says it's time for the government to acknowledge the problems.
It's just adding to a chorus of people, patients, workers, practitioners, experts who say this system is in crisis. We need to do something now. It's absolutely underfunded also, and it's time for an inquiry into mental health.
The Health Minister, Jonathan Coleman, says the suggestion people are being pushed out to make room for others is worrying, but it's being addressed.
That report is from 14 months ago. The Ministry of Health has been working ever since with DHBs in light of the findings that have been communicated by the OAG. So there have been measures taken.
He added DHBs have plenty of money to care for people well. For Checkpoint, Karen Brown.
Checkpoint put in a request to interview Health Minister Jonathan Coleman. We were able to pre-record an interview before the program or do one live at any stage during the program. His office told us he was unable to rearrange his schedule. We note this is the most recent of numerous requests over a period of months to interview the Minister about mental health services that Mr Coleman has declined. It's 40 minutes past 5. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ. 80% of New Zealand's native bird species are in trouble, with some teetering on the brink of extinction. That's according to a new report from the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, Jan Wright, who says just one species in 5 is doing okay. She's calling for new taxes on tourists as one step to help save what she calls an irreplaceable national treasure. Kate Gutzel reports.
Jan Wright has a vision to restore native bird life throughout the country. The Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment says they're our country's great treasure, our national taonga. The situation is desperate and we cannot afford to lose any more species.
We've already lost 50 since humans arrived. The birds, in a way, represent the whole ecosystem, because if the birds are at the top of the food chain and they're well, it's a sign that everything else is well too. So in saving the birds, we save a whole lot else.
Dr. Wright makes 7 recommendations to the government. One of those includes tourists paying for things like access to national parks and also a nature board levy at ports and airports. The money raised could go towards maintaining infrastructure, which would allow more money to be spent on protecting birds and other ecological treasures. Dr. Wright says it's a form of user pays for the beauty of this country and its biodiversity.
I mean, we do have people staying very, very cheaply on the conservation estate in huts, coming over and living for a fraction of what it would cost to live in their own country. And I don't really understand why we don't do this myself.
Forest and Birds Chief Executive Kevin Haig says the report makes it clear a lot of money will be needed to save threatened birds, and tourists should help foot the bill.
Unquestionably, tourists are having a very substantial impact on our conservation estate. Well then, why on earth shouldn't we? Most other countries do this. New Zealand is actually a little odd around the world in that we don't place some sort of levy on tourists. Certainly the research indicates that tourists themselves would have no objection to paying for that.
Another recommendation is for the government to start a public discussion about genetic modification of predators. Jan Wright says scientists are working on ways to eradicate predators by genetically engineering them to become infertile, but she says the public have little awareness of what they're trying to achieve.
Because of the way the debate over genetically modified food unfolded in New Zealand, you don't want to do all this science behind closed doors and then suddenly emerge and say to the public, oh well, we've got this wonderful GM technology. I have recommended a program of staged engagement with the public so they can express their worries.
The director of the country's Biological Heritage National Science Challenge, Andrea Byrom, says genetic modification work is in its infancy.
I completely agree with that recommendation that science shouldn't be done in a vacuum. As scientists, we should be willing to talk about our research and to be open about what can happen long term, but in the short term to say to the public, what do we want? What do we want as a nation? Because we are going to lose these species unless we do something game-changing and radically different.
Dr. Wright says the Predator-Free 2050 pledge is a big step forward, but it provides little detail of how the country gets to the goal, and it needs an action plan. She also recommends optimising the use of 1080 in different forest systems and developing new baits and lures for feral cats. For Checkpoint, ko Kate Godsall-Tene.
And Dr. Wright will be our guest on Checkpoint after 6 o'clock. It's coming up to 18 minutes past 5. It's been 12 years in the making, but the British and Irish Lions have returned. The 41-strong squad, yes, that's right, 41 of them touched down at Auckland Airport just after midday today and were welcomed with a formal porphyry inside the terminal before being greeted by excited fans, some even dressed as lions, at the arrival gate. Our reporter Matt Chatterton was there.
The 2017 British and Irish Lions team has been labelled the best side assembled in recent memory, and there's a genuine buzz they may finally break their 46-year hoodoo in New Zealand. Excited fans clad in red at the gate were quick to forget what happened in 2005 when a young Daniel Carter ran circles around the British and Irish Lions that resulted in a 3-0 whitewash to the All Blacks. UK-born triplets Charlie, Harry and Lewis Banfield hadn't even started school back then, but 17-year-old Harry Banfield is confident the Lions can turn the tables this time round.
I believe that just the emphasis of how much the Northern Hemisphere rugby has improved over the last even 12 months, 18 months. The divide between the Northern and Southern Hemisphere is getting closer and closer, especially with Australia not doing as well, South Africa effectively falling apart. And then the resurgence of England and Ireland, even Scotland. You see they beat Wales, they beat Ireland in the Six Nations, and it kind of all adds to it. Yeah. It's just getting tighter, really.
Just to show the All Blacks that they can't write us off early, and we'll come back fighting hard and show them how it's done.
On top of their 3 tests against the All Blacks, the Lions face all 5 of the New Zealand Super Rugby franchises, the Maori All Blacks and the provincial Barbarian side during their 5-week tour. The 10-match schedule will be one of the toughest tests in world rugby, but the New Zealand coach of the Lions, Warren Gatlin, says his side is embracing the challenge.
We know how tough it is, but if we can galvanise really quickly as a team and come together as quickly as we can and get some success under our belts in the first 2 or 3 games and prepare well enough for what's going to be a tough test series, but I think we can come over here and really acquit ourselves well, and for everyone I just hope it's going to be an incredibly exciting tour.
Team manager John Spencer was part of the 1971 Lions team that won the one and only Test series against the All Blacks. He says the 2017 Lions squad needs to understand the rugby-mad culture here in New Zealand, but believes they're on the right track.
We're bringing a very strong team here, the strongest Lions team that will ever have left our shores. You know, who wouldn't want to play against the All Blacks when they've been so successful, when they're the world champions? We think this is an incredible opportunity for our team, for our players and our support team, both as individuals and also as a team.
And the Banford triplets agree. They reckon Warren Gatlin could be the Lions' trump card.
He knows what teams play like, he knows the style, and he hopefully knows how to match it and beat it.
Meanwhile, across town this morning, the All Blacks unveiled their special edition jersey for the Lions tour. The, wait for it, surprise surprise, black jersey features a special All Blacks emblem for the tour. Showing off his modelling skills, Captain Kieran Reid says it's shaping up to be a good tour.
On paper, they're a great side. They've got some awesome players, so I can't wait really to see them out on the field this Saturday and moving forward over the next couple of weeks. So probably give us more of an indication of, perhaps how they're going to play and what they're going to bring.
The first match of the series is between the British and Irish Lions and the Provincial Barbarians in Whangarei on Saturday. The Banford triplets are looking forward to it. They're heading to 5 of the 10 games, including 2 of the 3 All Blacks tests. For Checkpoint, Matt Chatterton.
A rodeo cowboy who was caught abusing animals earlier this year has escaped formal punishment, a decision animal welfare activists say is ludicrous. In January this year, Checkpoint broke the story of a man shocking young calves with an electric prodder at a rodeo in Northland. The footage we put up was viewed hundreds of thousands of times online, prompted a government investigation and led to businesses withdrawing their sponsorship. But after viewing the footage, the Ministry for Primary Industries has opted for a warning. Here's Zach Fleming with more.
Armed with an electric prodder, the man looks side to side as if he's checking whether anyone's watching. He then shocks a young calf, which was patiently waiting in a chute to be roped. Shocking calves is against the law.
Right before being traumatised during calf roping, they're being traumatised in the chutes.
Lynn Charlton, she filmed the shocking in January at the Mid-Northern Rodeo just outside of Whangarei. After a 4-month investigation, the Ministry for Primary Industries has formally warned the man, but chosen not to prosecute.
He goes on notice or on record that he's an offender. And usually what that does, that's enough to generate what you're trying to achieve, which is for him not to do it again.
Chris Rodwell, MPI's Animal Welfare Compliance Manager. He says important factors were that the man is elderly, has no criminal history, and shocking young calves is on the, quote, low end of offending. But the man's been involved in rodeos for 35 years. Checkpoint asked Mr Rodwell if MPI had considered prosecuting to send a message.
Yes, you need to make a point, and animal welfare is always our top priority, but bear in mind that the level of the penalty has got to be appropriate for the level of offending, and we believe in this case it was.
Checkpoint's asked to speak to the man in the footage. He's yet to respond. Ms Charlton says a formal warning isn't good enough.
It's what we expected, really. MPI are pretty gutless, to be honest, when it comes to dealing with the rodeo community. They seem to take this very softly approach, and there's always an excuse for why people are not getting consequences for animal abuse.
At the time, Rodeo Cowboys Association President Marty Deans denied the man shocked young calves.
And what I can see, I do not see that animal getting an electric zap.
So he just had an electric prodder in his hand, moved his hand with the electric prodder in it near the calf, but didn't actually use it, as far as you're concerned?
As far as I'm concerned, he didn't.
Sponsors disagreed. After being shown the calf being shocked, along with other footage, national companies including LJ Hooker, Ray White, Harcourts, Placemakers and Meridian Energy withdrew their sponsorship across New Zealand and vowed not to sponsor any in the future. Today, spokesperson for the Rodeo Cowboys Association, Michael Laws, says a mistake was made, but lessons have been learned.
It's good that there's been an investigation and good that there's been an outcome, and it's good that people need to be reminded of what the code is.
When you say lessons learned, did he not know that was against the code? I mean, he's been involved in rodeos for 35 years.
No, he didn't. My understanding is, and that's probably why there was quite a leniency shown, was because he thought that those calves were of age.
Animal welfare group SAFE's campaign director, Mandy Carter, says it's good the man was warned, but warnings aren't enough.
He abused them. He gave these calves an electric shock, which would have been extremely painful, purely because he could goad them so that when they got out into the arena, they would run even faster. And if he's been involved in rodeo for 35 years, he really should know better. And if he doesn't, it's the Rodeo Association's fault.
SAFE wants rodeos banned, as does the SPCA. The organisation say rodeos are cruel and subject animals to extreme fear, stress and anxiety. MPI says the recent rodeo season went well. This was the only formal warning issued.
In the code, it's mandated that they have to have an animal welfare officer in attendance and a veterinarian. We are seeing relatively minor issues in terms of animal welfare.
Lynn Charlton says she'll be at rodeos next season too, camera in tow. For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
Officials are warning the iconic pohutakawa could be one of the worst affected plants and even die off completely as the Myrtle Rust outbreak spreads. The Department of Conservation is scouring the country collecting seeds from native plants whose very existence could be threatened. Our Taranaki Whanganui reporter Robin Martin has the details.
The Department of Conservation's Threats Manager is Alan Ross. He says the seeds of 10 native myrtle variants are already secure in the Massey University seed bank, and the race is now on to collect those of the outstanding 17 plant types. Mr. Ross says collecting the seeds is the prudent thing to do.
It's a safeguard in case the impact of the myrtle rust is severe. Some of the myrtle species are relatively uncommon. One, in fact, is very rare. So it's a worst-case scenario.
Mr. Ross says the outlook does not look good for pohutakawa.
On Rail Island, we get a sense that the Rail Island Putakawa is fairly similar to New Zealand. On Rail Island, the Putakawa has been quite heavily impacted. Certainly, all the young shoots are getting the disease, and over time, that's got to be really hard for a tree to survive if all the young growth is being impacted.
Mr. Ross says there is still hope that a natural genetic variant in pohutakawa may be resistant to myrtle rust. He says although no cases have been found in the wild, DOC expects the disease will become established in New Zealand. There are now 29 infections in Taranaki, Northland and the Waikato, the latest on 2 mature pohutakawa at a Waitara golf course. David Butler is president of the Manukorohi Golf Club. He fears the trees may have to go.
The worst case scenario, that is what they're telling us. There could be a number of trees in that particular area. We're not happy. But at the end of the day, we have to deal with it, and we're going the best way we can with the Ministry of Industries to cope with that.
Meanwhile, Big Jim's Garden Centre reopened today after being shut down 2 weeks ago when the myrtle rust outbreak struck Taranaki. Co-owner Vince Nouse says it has had a huge impact on the business.
It's been like a morgue. We've been very limited what we're allowed to do here. We basically keep the plants alive by watering. And in that time, they had spray programs, checking all our plants if they could find any more disease. All the plants in the Muriaceae family, they have taken off-site and destroyed.
Mr. Now says his bottom line has also been hit.
We haven't been able to open the doors for 14 days, so we have absolutely not a dollar come through the door. We're working with MPI now as far as compensation, but we'll have to put all the paperwork in place and see how we go with that.
Despite the disruption, Mr. Now says he counts himself lucky because several nurseries in the area are still in lockdown. Huarangi local Pauline Crowley-Zilches is just happy to have her favourite garden centre open again.
It's a great centre and we were shocked when it was closed. And we just thought we'd come down today, now first day back, and we'll catch up and have a big spend up and get some lovely coffee next door.
But you're not concerned about coming back here and shopping here again?
No, because I'm trusting the authorities and Vince to be on top of it.
The latest advice from MPI is for gardeners to avoid planting any species susceptible to myrtle rust, particularly in those areas already affected by the disease. In Taranaki for Checkpoint, call Robin Martin Tierney.
Paul Sternaway with the headlines, but just before them, Team New Zealand's broken Swedish Arts 2 days in a row, beating Artemis at the America's Cup in Bermuda, another race involving a penalty. The Cup defender Oracle Team USA also continued its winning streak, this time beating France, and Sir Ben Ainsley's BAR scored only its second win in the regatta, this time over poor old Artemis. As the qualifying round progresses, the bonus points which two teams brought into the competition could be really important. America's Cup reporter Todd Nile filed this report from Bermuda.
A bold charge by Team New Zealand as Artemis headed to gate 6 again had Artemis penalised, but the Kiwis were out in front anyway, and helmsman Peter Burling was delighted.
Yeah, I wouldn't really say it was clean and simple. It was really another really hard fought victory, and I think it's something that the Artemis boys have been sailing really well on that breeze, and obviously we screwed up the start a little bit to let them into a bit of a lead, and then we had another issue halfway down that first run which opened it up even more. But the boys dug pretty deep and just grounded out, and it was really pleasing to see a fair few improvements that we made from yesterday, and I think the boat was going really quick today, and the manoeuvres were really tidy after that. So it was good how we managed to bounce back from that little error at the bottom mark and take a win.
A rueful Artemis skipper Nathan Outeridge concedes his team has been sailing well, but still finds itself at the bottom of the points table, along with France and Japan, after losing to BAR as well as the Kiwis today.
Yeah, we've had a lot of close losses, which is quite hard. We lost to France by 3.3 seconds. Really close loss to Ben in the first race of the first round robin. Lost a race because of an umpire decision, and lost another one today, really close with New Zealand. So getting a bit of the rough end of the stick at the moment. We know we're sailing well, we know we're happy with the boat. We just need to get a couple more points on the board and make sure we get through the next round.
Oracle Team USA cruised home ahead of France's Groupama despite a problem inside the defender's wing. While talking to Jimmy Spithill, I accidentally opened the door to some more Kiwi baiting. Any changes on your day off?
No, we never take a day off. You guys should know that. I know you guys like to, but not at Oracle Team USA.
Two teams have come to the regatta with bonus points. Sir Ben Ainsley's BAR brought 2 for winning the build-up World Series, and Oracle Team USA got 1 for being second. Ainsley's had only 2 wins in this regatta, worst equal, and with the lowest scoring team going home after this round, the bonus points are priceless.
We hope we wouldn't need them, but certainly coming into this event, it's well documented we've been struggling for straight line speed. Thankfully our performance in the America's Cup World Series was very strong, and so it's turned out they're very useful. And we may well need him to get through to the next stage of the competition.
Jimmy Spithill also sees value in his bonus point being all that keeps his team ahead of New Zealand.
I think the bonus point, for sure, they will come into play. I mean, you look at Ben. Ben shouldn't really be where he is if it wasn't for the bonus point, so that's definitely working in his favour. For us, who knows? But at the end of the day, it doesn't really change our goal. We want to try and win every race and try and walk away with here for the bonus point for the Cup.
And Peter Burling, can they clamber past the defender's bonus point?
We'll have to wait and see. We've got plenty to improve, keep working on, and I think we'll be back out there this afternoon for a little bit of training to try and tidy up a few things we've been weak at.
Light winds could put tomorrow's racing at risk, with Team New Zealand due to meet BAR and SoftBank coming back from a bye to face Oracle and Groupama. In Bermuda, mo te hotaka o te ahiahi, ko Todd Nile tēnei.
You're with Checkpoint on RNZ, 26.5 to 6. Coming up after the headlines and Nona, we're going to go live to the incident controller who is going to update us on this fire at the refuse station just to the west of central Auckland. It is a large fire. We'll go there live, but before all of that, here's Paul Brennan with the RNZ headlines.
Thank you, John. In our headlines, smoke from a fire at an Auckland rubbish transfer site can be seen from kilometres away. The fire service says a recycling shed of about 1,500 square metres is well ablaze at the Waitakere Refuge Transfer Station. 70 firefighters from 10 fire stations across the city are fighting the fire. Auckland Council says the site has been evacuated and there are no reports of injuries. The fire service says firefighters are having to work around dangerous high-tension overhead power lines. The police are speaking to a large number of witnesses after shots were fired during the armed hold-up of a South Auckland bar. 3 men, all wearing disguises and 2 holding guns, walked into Hidden Home Bar on Te Rakau Drive in Pakuranga at about 12:30 this afternoon. The police say the trio forced staff and customers to lie on the floor, fired off shots without hitting anyone, and ran off with cash to a waiting car. The Auditor-General says urgent changes are needed to improve the way mental health patients are discharged from hospital. In a report today, the office says the pressure on inpatient and community mental health services has resulted in many patients being discharged without adequate plans for suitable accommodation and other things. Silver Fern Farms says it's offering support to the 370 workers who will lose their jobs with the closure of its sheep meat plant in Ashburton. The company confirmed the closure to the workers at a meeting this afternoon following a 2-week consultation period. And a parasite that can destroy oysters has been found on Stewart Island. The Ministry for Primary Industries says a strain of Bonamia has infected 2 flat oyster farms. It says the parasite has been in the Marlborough Sounds in Nelson since 2015, but this is the first time it's been detected anywhere else. A different strain of Bonamia devastated the Bluff oyster industry in the early 1990s and 2000s. Those are the headlines. Our next news and sport will be at 6.
We're going to go live to the fire shortly, but let's turn to business news now with Nona Peltier. The Reserve Bank Governor has issued its half-yearly assessment of the financial system. What did Governor Graham Wheeler say, Nona?
He said the financial system is pretty sound. However, he's a little concerned about the debt that dairy farmers have been carrying, even though prices have been on the rise, and rising debt among households. So those 2 things are risks to the financial stability of New Zealand. So the Reserve Bank flagged those today. On the other hand...
How serious was the flagging?
Well, when the Reserve Bank governor says it, you know, I mean, that's his job, right? Yep. So in context, you'd expect him, that's his concern. He's only really there to look after the financial stability of the country and to manage monetary policy. So those 2 things are his main concern. If he says there's a bit of a concern, there probably is.
Yep.
Of course, that message didn't get through to businesses today, no, because the RNZ released their business confidence survey, and guess what? Perked up for the first time this year, so it's up. Business confidence is up. The businesses are expecting to hire more staff and to make bigger profits by raising prices. So expect that in the future.
Which means inflationary pressure, which means
right.
Graham Wheeler hauls out the interest rates.
And that's where the risk, of course, comes in for debt-laden
people who are mortgaged up to the eyeballs. Yeah, absolutely.
So be careful with that. Meanwhile, the ANZ says that the strong confidence in the economy points to a very strong growth over the next few years, potentially 3.5% to 4%. We'll see.
Thanks, Nona. What did the markets do today?
Okay, well, the New Zealand dollar was just a little bit weaker, but after quite a strong gain overnight, so 70.9 US cents. It was above 71 overnight. 95 Australian, 55.3 pence. And the NZX Top 50 Index rose 7 points to 7,419.
Auckland Business Reporter Nona Peltier, thank you so much. 22 to 6. Back to that major fire which has broken out at the Waitakere Refuse Transfer Station in West Auckland. 15 fire crews are responding from across Auckland. In fact, I think the number's much larger than that now. The incident controller is John Booth, and he joins us now live on the phone. John, it's nice to have you with us because I know how busy you are. This is the refuse station at the Lincoln Road turnoff, right?
That's the one, yes. It's the Waitakere Refuse and Recycling Transfer Station.
OK, how big's your fire there?
The fire was actually, luckily for us, in what we would say outbuildings. It was where they stored a lot of recycled furniture and all that in open buildings. So the fire sort of started in the middle. The total area of the buildings was about 30 metres by 40 metres around about. And the fire started in the middle and was spreading quite rapidly each side. A lot of people would have seen the big black smoke rolling up into the air, but our guys have got in there and we've managed to put it out and probably save 2/3 of the actual structure itself.
The way that station works is, of course, that you drive in and you kind of drive round it. So that would suggest that your engines had reasonable access?
Oh, very good access into here. The place is designed, obviously, for heavy trucks, which our vehicles are. So we were able to bring in long hoses off the concourse itself and bring in good water supplies for our our aerial operations and our firefighters to attack the fire and suppress it as soon as we could.
I know I know traffic is not your department, but I see that the Northwestern is still open. It's right beside that refuse station, right? But the traffic is very heavy and slow moving, but the motorway's still functioning.
Oh yeah, the motorway, we didn't really interfere with the motorway. People would have slowed down probably just to try and spot what the big ball of black smoke was. But, you know, the motorway's freeing up now. The hardest part was the time of day the fire came through, you know, 20 past 4, a lot of vehicles on the road and, you know, delayed a lot of our trucks getting here at the first instance.
But you're on top of this now.
Absolutely.
Good work. Incident Controller John Booth, they seem to have, well, it's an hour 20 since that fire broke out, so they have got on top of it very smartly indeed. It's 20 to 6. The government will pay for young Maori, will help pay for young Maori to get their driver's licences in an effort to help them get into work and keep them out of jail. $4 million will be spent on the initiative, which will also offer birth certificates and passports to those who qualify. What's going on here? What's this about? Lee Marama McLaughlin reports.
A 19-year-old man who goes by the name Ihaka has been driving around Wellington without a licence for 2 years.
If I'm just driving with like my grandparents or something in the car, I don't get too worried because there's like an older person in there. But if it's just like me with a bunch of like younger people, I guess there's like a way bigger chance of getting pulled over, and that's like the most time I'd get like worried.
But driving without a licence is a crime, and it's a risk that the Minister for Māori Development, Te Ururoa Flavel, does not want rangatahi to take. At a breakfast tui in Wellington today, he announced plans to help young Māori get their licence.
A lot of our rangatahi drive without a licence and get caught. Once they get caught, they get fined. Once they get fined, they cannot pay the fine. You end up in the court system, you end up and fines accumulate over time. You can't get to work, it's just a lousy cycle.
A learner licence costs $94 and a restricted is around $135. Ihaka says those prices are prohibitive for Māori.
I reckon that will put some people off getting it, especially students, because they still got other things to pay for, like rent bills and stuff, and like student funds. I reckon it'll be real good for like people my age and even upwards, because I still know people that are like 50 that don't have their licences, like a couple of cousins and like aunties that don't have their licences just because of the cost.
The Chief Executive of the New Zealand Howard League for Penal Reform, Mike Williams, says some young people also put off getting a licence because they can't read the test and don't have access to the internet to practice the road code. Since 2014, his organisation has helped to get licences for about 500 young people who are on probation for driving offences. He says nearly 2/3 of Māori sent to jail for the first time have a driving offence.
We can get them their licences and point them in the direction of a job, then that heavily reduces the chances of these young people ending up in jail.
The New Zealand Local Authority Traffic Institute says a young person is 3 times more likely to get work if they have a restricted or full licence. But Auckland Transport's Claire Dixon, who oversees a workshop for Māori to get their learner licence, says it's also about saving lives.
Young Māori are overrepresented in terms of crash rates for their age group, and our aim is to improve the safety of these young people. But, of course, there are really positive spin-offs from getting a formal driver licence.
The initiative will also equip rangatahi who meet eligibility criteria with IRD numbers, birth certificates and passports. And that's good news for 21-year-old Remedy McRae.
It would definitely help me, I reckon. I really do want to do some travelling. Never travelled before, so that would be amazing to have something like that offered to us.
The $4 million funding will be part of a wider government plan to dedicate a total of $12 million to support young people who are not in employment or training. Mo te hōtaka o te ahiahi, ko Lee Marama McLaughlin tēnei.
Just before we move on, Twitter is exploding as we speak because not terribly long ago, about an hour and a half ago, Donald J. Trump, who is of course President of the United States, tweeted from his personal account, and I quote, "Despite the constant negative press, Kovvefi," and that's the tweet, "Despite the constant negative press, Kovvefi," and the world is having a field day trying to work out what the hell he was talking about. The speculation is Yes, very high-spirited. It's been retweeted 53,000 times and liked 65,000 times. Someone has pointed out that kovefi in Russian means I resign. I don't speak Russian, so I don't know if that's true. Someone else has asked him if he fell asleep on the toilet. And Twitter is having a field day. That's Donald Trump's personal account, the one he used to help himself get elected, despite the constant negative press, kovefi. Nothing else. It hasn't been deleted, and there has been no further explanation as to what he means. There's no way the government will be able to reach its goal of keeping more kids out of hospital unless it adopts a Labour bill to make homes healthy. That's what one respiratory paediatrician, Professor Ines Asher, told MPs today. She says Andrew Little's Healthy Homes Bill is an absolute game changer. Political reporter Benedict Collins has more.
Kelly Walker has been living in a cold, damp home on the Kapiti coast. She says it's been taking its toll on the health of her 1-year-old daughter.
Our baby ended up she's been admitted into hospital 3 times with respiratory problems. So I think the second time they did the referral, and then the third time it was quite bad because she ended up in ICU. It's hard to keep this house warm. It's just too big, too open, but it's what we can afford at the moment. So we've got to make do with what you got.
At Parliament today, a select committee was considering the Labour leader Andrew Little's Healthy Homes Bill, which would ensure every rental meets minimum standards of heating and insulation. And a professor of paediatrics at Auckland University, Ines Asher, told MPs it will make an incredible difference to children's health.
We all know in New Zealand that cold, damp houses make children sick. It's all been proven. We've shown that making houses not cold and damp, they're not as sick. We also know that some children are dying from cold, damp housing conditions.
Professor Asher says there's only one way the government will be able to achieve its new Better Public Service target of reducing hospital admission rates of children by 25% for a range of avoidable conditions over the next 4 years.
There's no way in the world it's going to be able to reach those targets of 15% reduction by 2019 and 25% reduction by 2021. He won't reach the targets for respiratory conditions, which are a large proportion of these preventable admissions, unless it brings in this bill.
The president of Otago University's Students' Association, Hugh Baird, told the MPs many Dunedin flats are simply slums, and the bill's incredibly important.
When students in North Dunedin are waking up in damp duvets, mould on the ceilings, shoes that are covered in mould, and landlords who for the most part care more about the yield on their flat than the individuals that are in that flat, it makes it incredibly tough for students to concentrate on their studies, which is the main reason why they're there and why the taxpayer pays so much money for these students to be down there.
Labour's housing spokesperson Phil Twyford says Professor Asher is a leading authority on the impacts of poor quality housing on children's health, and the government should listen up.
When she says that Andrew Little's Healthy Homes Bill would make sure that the government met its Better Public Service target to reduce child hospitalisations for respiratory illness by 25%, well, that's a pretty compelling case.
The Health Minister, Jonathan Coleman, says the government's doing its bit with its home insulation program and free GP visits for under 13s.
Her comments are obviously, on the right track, and she is an expert in her field, so I don't dispute that, but the government has done a lot in that field.
And chances of national backing Andrew Little's?
Look, I haven't actually read the detail of his bill for quite some time, so, we have laid out our stall on that one.
The Select Committee is due to report back to Parliament on the bill at the end of next month. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Benedict Collins.
Lots of our excellent Samoan-speaking listeners pointing out that fefe, F-E-F-E, which Donald Trump has just tweeted, means fear in Samoan. So maybe Freud was at work with that tweet. Fear and stigma is still putting some people off testing for HIV. New figures from the AIDS epidemiology group show a record number of New Zealanders were diagnosed with the disease last year. Of the 224 newly diagnosed cases, the vast majority of them were from gay and bisexual men. Here's Sarah Robson.
Joshua James is 22 and from Wellington. He says he and his friends have safe sex and get tested for HIV at least every 3 months.
I mean, it's terrifying getting tested, especially if you have participated in risky behaviour.
Although they didn't grow up during the 1980s at the height of the AIDS epidemic, Joshua James says there are always lots of young people getting tested for HIV at events like the Big Gay Out.
I think young people are getting tested regularly, and I think that might also be a reason why we're seeing the official amount going up. That more people getting tested, more people knowing their status.
But Mark Fisher from the HIV support group Body Positive says other gay and bisexual men are still put off getting tested.
There's fear around getting that test. A lot of people don't want to know because there's still that whole history of the stigma of being HIV positive. Like, I don't want to know that I'm positive because then someone will assume that I've done something bad, and that whole kind of stigma approach to it.
Mark Fisher says it's also concerning that 23 people were diagnosed with AIDS last year. He says that shows many people are put off getting tested until they actually start showing symptoms.
And for a lot of those people, the medications won't work at that time, so they're dying, which is something that shouldn't happen in this day and age. So that's a concern.
Jason Myers from the New Zealand AIDS Foundation says people who are at high risk of contracting HIV should be getting tested. But he doesn't think a blanket approach is necessary.
The message really needs to be if you've been at high risk of HIV infection, so that in New Zealand is gay and bisexual men who are having unprotected sex, people who are injecting drugs and sharing needles, for example. There's that group of people who are engaged in those behaviours should be testing regularly. We wouldn't go out and suggest that everybody in New Zealand should be getting a regular HIV test.
Jason Myers says access to testing can also be a barrier. Clinics are open from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and some people can't get time off work to get a test. He says the AIDS Foundation is looking at different ways they can overcome those barriers.
We use HIV rapid testing, for example, and we go out to community settings where we know we'll be able to access those high-risk people. We're also this year looking at piloting a home testing scheme so that actually we can send HIV test kits out to people's homes and they can administer the tests themselves, with us, of course, providing them links to care should they get an HIV positive result.
Of last year's newly diagnosed cases, 217 were men and 27 were women. 42 were infected with HIV through heterosexual contact and 159 were men who have sex with men. For Checkpoint, Sarah Robson, Aho.
8.5 to 6. A second alcohol and guest ban has been imposed at a Wellington University hall after drunken students caused a large amount of damage on Saturday night. At least 2 doors were torn off their hinges, chairs were thrown through walls, toilets damaged and lamps destroyed at Jones Stevens Hall on the terrace. Victoria University has launched an investigation into the incident, but students say the hall has a reputation for, quote, rowdy behaviour, and the first alcohol and guest ban was imposed after Orientation Week celebrations earlier in the year. Anne-Marie May compiled this report.
Victoria University's website describes Jones Stevens Hall as first-year accommodation committed to developing a culture that encourages involvement, responsibility and achievement. When first-year student Stacey Larson returned home to the hostel on Sunday morning, she saw little sign of damage on her own floor, but was surprised at what she saw elsewhere.
I was pretty shocked about the doors. I don't find that very necessary to do. On a drunk level, I don't see how people can do that. I was a bit surprised by that.
Victoria University Students Association President Rory Lenehan-Aiken says the damage is extreme and he's disappointed by the behaviour of the students involved. He says it's not what the general student population expects of each other.
I think it's important to remember it's a rarity, it's the exception to the norm, and the vast majority of students had their heads down and lead up to exams right now. So, it's disappointing to see, but not something that we see often.
Another Jones Stevens resident, Bram Cooper, says a reward has been posted on the hostel's Facebook page for any information about who caused the damage.
They really want to find the people. They've got some rewards out, try and hunt down the people so everyone doesn't have to pay. So I don't think anyone's actually fronting up for it at this point. And they don't want to put the damages on all of us because we didn't partake in the partying.
More than 200 people live at Jones Stevens Hall, including Grayson McIntyre, who says last time a lot of damage was done, the actual bill for each resident was not too big.
We've had quite a bit of damage already, but it's only been $8 per person so far. There'll be more now because of the new damages, but it's not that expensive really. The only annoying thing is that we have to pay for it, and there's other people from other halls that are doing a lot of the damage, not just us.
Since the weekend's incident, some students say they feel unsafe living at Joan Stephens Hall, and the student president, Rory Lenehan-Aiken, says that's the most concerning thing of all. He says students should feel safe in the halls of residence, and the Student Association will provide support and advice for those who are worried.
And there's a lot of university services that people can talk to within their hall or outside if they're not feeling safe. But the other thing I'd say is that this is a rare occurrence. By and large, the communities in the halls are really safe, nurturing environment.
In a statement, Victoria University's Vice-Chancellor, Professor Grant Guilford, says an investigation has been launched and the alcohol and guest ban will remain in place until that's completed and disciplinary measures are being considered. For Checkpoint, Anne-Marie May.
A tennis player who forced himself on a journalist repeatedly trying to kiss her during a live TV interview has been banned from the French Open. Tournament organisers called Maxime Amour's behaviour towards reporter Myrtle Thomas reprehensible. They revoked the 21-year-old's accreditation, have ordered an investigation into the incident. With the details, here's the BBC's Bonnie Simmons-Brown.
Myrtle Thomas told French media she would have punched tennis player Maxime Amour in the face if they'd been off camera. The sports reporter was trying to interview the Frenchman after his first-round defeat at Roland Garros. Instead of answering Thomas's questions, Amour puts his arm around her and starts kissing her cheek.
Vous jouez la prolongation, qu'est-ce que vous faites? Qu'est-ce que vous faites encore là?
The incident happened during a live broadcast on the Eurosport TV network. Commentators back in the studio laugh and clap as the interview unfolds. As Thomas begins to wind up, Amour goes in for one more kiss. It's a situation the host of ABC's The Ticket, journalist Tracy Holmes, has seen before.
It's very similar to the Chris Gale incident with Australian journalist Mel McLaughlin at the cricket, the Big Bash. It's amazing how often these sorts of events just appear and reappear around the world, and you begin to wonder, is anyone learning anything? You had the panellists who were watching this event all laughing. OK, so a 21-year-old athlete pays the price now, but what happens to all of those commentators who are much older and you would think would know better? They still get away with that.
Amour has used social media to apologise for his actions. He says he expressed his enthusiasm crudely and he's learning from his mistakes.
It's Bonnie Simmons-Brown reporting an investigation underway. I'm not sure what there really is to investigate. The facts speak for themselves. It's 3.5 to 6 of your Lions tickets haven't arrived. We think we know where they are. An envelope containing tickets to the Lions match in Wellington against the mighty Canes has bounced from one letterbox to the next in a small rural North Island street. Now the envelope has made its way to the last house in the street and the resident is desperate to unite the tickets with their owner. Where else would she go? You know it. Checkpoint. She called us to explain.
I got home from work yesterday and my husband says to me, look what arrived in the letterbox. And it's an envelope addressed to a person and it's got 6 or 7 tickets to the Lions playing in Wellington in June at some point. This is the Hurricanes, I think. Anyhow, this envelope, it's not for us. And the person who it's addressed to, we don't know that person. But the envelope has done the rounds of our street because it was first addressed to the people at, number 1. And they crossed it out and said, not for us, and put it into the letterbox of number 2. And they crossed it out and put it into the letterbox of number 3. And it's done the whole rounds of this small rural street. And it's ended up with us. And we're the last street in the house. And they're not our tickets. And for love of money, I cannot find this person. And I cannot get hold of Ticketek to give the tickets back. So there's somebody out there missing a chunk of tickets to this rugby game. What I will tell you is that every house that received this envelope opened it, had a look and realised that's not for us, closed the envelope and sellotaped it up again before putting it into the next letterbox. So it's been opened probably about 10 times and closed again. So I know that my neighbours are really, really honest people. And so whoever does get these tickets back has a whole street to be grateful to.
We can tell you there were 8 tickets to the Lions versus the Hurricanes, Wellington, June 27th. So we contacted Ticketek on the street's behalf. They've been in touch with the purchaser. They say if tickets go missing or if you end up with someone's tickets and they're not for you for any kind of event, simply contact them. They can cancel the tickets and reissue them to the rightful owner, which will indeed happen in this case. It's coming up to 1 minute to 6, and there is just glee and delight and merriment at the Donald Trump tweet, despite the constant negative press. Kofefi, full stop, was no full stop, he's just stopped. People are pointing out that he probably meant despite the constant negative press coverage and was almost certainly going to go into some rave about how magnificently he's doing, but he didn't get to the rave, he just added F-E-F-E. And some enterprising person in California has already bought, Calvin's just put him up on screen, he's already bought the personalised number plate. Hey, that's the spirit of free enterprise. Donald Trump would love that. C-O-V-F-E-F-E. He now has the personalised number plate. Talia Cooper has just tweeted, my dad just bought the California license plate, Kofefi. The tweet still stands, Donald Trump or his people haven't removed it. It has now been retweeted, wait for it, ladies and gentlemen, because such is the world we live in, 61,173 times. And if you're not a Twitter person, that is a heap.
RNZ News at 6. Good evening, I'm Paul Brennan. The fire service says a large blaze in West Auckland is now under control. Around 70 firefighters battled the fire that started in the outbuildings of the Waitakere Refuse Transfer Station on the concourse in Henderson at around 4 o'clock. John Booth from the fire service says the blaze spread rapidly through a 30 by 40 metre area storing recycled furniture.
The fire started in the middle and was spreading quite rapidly each side. A lot of people would have seen the big black smoke rolling up into the air, but our guys have got in there and we've managed to put it out and probably save 2/3 of the actual structure itself.
John Booth says State Highway 16 was crammed with usual traffic and motorists trying to spot the fire, but is now freeing up. The police are speaking to a large number of witnesses after shots were fired during an armed hold-up of a South Auckland bar. They say 3 men, all wearing disguises and 2 holding guns, walked into Hedden Home Bar on Te Rako Drive in Pakuranga at about 12:30 this afternoon. The police say the trio forced the staff and customers inside to lie down on the floor, firing off shots, although not hitting anyone, before running off with cash in a waiting car. The police Eagle helicopter and a number of patrol cars were called to search the surrounding area, but the culprits are yet to be found. A forensic examination is underway and witnesses are being spoken to. Anyone with information is being urged to contact the police, potentially for a reward, as part of its month-long stolen goods campaign aimed at tackling aggravated robberies. The Auditor-General says urgent changes are needed to improve the way mental health patients are discharged from hospital. In a report today, the office says the pressure on inpatient and community mental health services has resulted in many patients being discharged without adequate plans for suitable accommodation and other support. The Assistant Auditor-General Mike Scott says urgent work is needed.
There are obstacles to this currently being done well. There are pressures which mean that discharge planning is not being done as well as it should be, in our view. And that's not just a health issue. It's an issue which involves the Ministry of Health, DHBs and other agencies.
Mike Scott there. A suicide car bomb explosion has rocked the Afghan capital Kabul, sending clouds of black smoke spiralling over the centre of the city. It happened near the German embassy in an area of the city near the presidential palace and other foreign embassies. Houses hundreds of metres away from the blast were damaged, with windows and doors blown off their hinges. Details are sketchy, but the police say several people have been killed and wounded. New Zealand has an embassy in Kabul, which is based in the British Embassy. It's not known how close the blast was to the embassy. A parasite that can destroy oysters has been found on Stewart Island. The Ministry for Primary Industries says it has confirmed the strain Bonamia ostrierae has infected 2 flat oyster farms on the island. It says the parasite has been in Marlborough Sounds and Nelson since 2015, but this is the first time it's been detected anywhere else. The infectious organism is not harmful to people, but is a major threat to flat oysters. A different strain of Bonamia devastated the bluff oyster industry in waves in the early 1990s. And again in the early 2000s. The ministry says extensive sampling of bluff oysters has not found the parasite, but it is increasing surveillance. It has also limited the movement of some shellfish species in Nelson, Marlborough Sounds and Stewart Island. The environment watchdog is calling for tourism taxes and a public discussion about genetic modification to control predators and tackle the country's declining bird population. 80% of New Zealand's native bird species are in trouble, with some teetering on the brink of extinction. Kate Gudsall reports.
New Zealand is home to 168 species of native birds, 93 of which are only found in this country, which makes them particularly vulnerable. In a new report from the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, Jan Wright says just 1 in 5 native birds are doing okay. Dr Wright says the government needs to start a public discussion about genetic modification of predators, which could lead to eradication in the long term. She's also recommending a nature border levy and user pays charges for overseas visitors to national parks. Call Kate Gudsall, 10A.
A rodeo cowboy who was caught abusing animals earlier this year has escaped formal punishment in a decision animal welfare activists say is ludicrous. Footage broadcast by Checkpoint in January showed a man shocking calves with an electric prodder at a rodeo in Northland. Cows can be shocked, but shocking calves is against the law. After a 4-month investigation, the Ministry for Primary Industries has opted for a formal warning instead of a prosecution or fine, saying the offending is at the low end. The Rodeo Cowboys Association says the man made a mistake in believing the calves were adults. The New Zealand Defence Force intends to be the first smoke-free military by 2020, including its military housing. It says it intends to ban the sale of cigarettes on camps and bases, as well as making Defence Force housing smoke-free. The next step will be to make all camps and bases smoke-free and support quit smoking initiatives. It is 6:05. On to sport now. Success in their opening tour matches will play a large part in determining whether the British and Irish Lions can make rugby history, says coach Warren Gatland. The Lions arrived in Auckland today for their 10-match, 3-test tour, with their first match against the provincial selection in Whangarei on Saturday. The Lions have enjoyed just one series victory over the All Blacks in 12 tours here almost 50 years ago. Gatland says the side's well aware of the expectation of success from their supporters.
We know how tough it is, but if we can galvanise really quickly as a team and get some success under our belts in the first 2 or 3 games and prepare well enough for what's going to be a tough test series, but I'm really excited about the quality, the depth of the squad. And I think we can come over here and really acquit ourselves well. And for everyone, I just hope it's going to be an incredibly exciting tour.
Warren Gatland there. Queensland are confident Anthony Milford is up to filling Jonathan Thurston's boots for tonight's State of Origin Rugby League opener in Brisbane. It will mark the first time since 2004 that Thurston won't run out in the halves for Queensland, having been ruled out of the match with a shoulder injury. But coach Kevin Walters believes Milford will thrive in the intensity of the Origin environment.
Got a lot of confidence in Anthony and his ability. He's played in the grand final before, in front of a big crowd, so he's played in big games here for the Broncos. This is the next step up, and the good players handle the pressure, and that's why we believe Anthony will handle the pressure.
Kevin Walters there, and the match kicks off at 10 p.m. And that's the news.
Whether you want to listen live or anytime, you'll find audio on demand from your favourite programs, interviews, music and bulletins at rnz.co.nz. You can save and download the best bits for later using your playlist. Plus feature articles, photo galleries, videos, recipes, book readings for kids and adults, and all our great series and podcasts. All that at rnz.co.nz.
Short forecast now from Met Service taking us through to midnight tomorrow, Thursday. And for Northland and Auckland, that includes Coromandel Peninsula, showers should ease and retreat to Northland. Showers return to Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula tomorrow afternoon. Waikato, Waitomo, Taumarunui, Taupo and Bay of Plenty, it'll be fine apart from isolated showers. Low cloud or fog in the morning. Fine for Taranaki to Kapiti, including Taihape. Gisborne to Wairarapa, fine for the rest of today, cloudy tomorrow, a few showers. Wellington cloudy, the odd shower tonight becoming fine tomorrow afternoon. Bulla, Nelson and Marlborough, fine for the rest of today. Isolated showers, they should clear inland tomorrow afternoon. Westland, fine for the rest of today. Showers tomorrow, mainly about the coast there. Canterbury to Southland, including Fiordland, mostly cloudy. Isolated showers. Patchy drizzle developing in North Otago, Dunedin and Clutha. Areas of low cloud or fog morning and night. And for the Chathams, often cloudy with a few showers. 6:08.
You are with Checkpoint on RNZ. Thank you, Paul, and thank you for being with us, everyone. The environmental watchdog describes the situation facing New Zealand's native birds as pretty desperate and says a lot more money is needed to save some from extinction. In a new report, the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, Dr. Jan Wright, says 80% of native bird species are in trouble. She's calling for new taxes on tourists and using genetic science to help control predators and help species like the kakapo, takehe, little spotted kiwi survive. I asked Dr. Wright how bad things are.
John, we have 168 native bird species. 1/3 of them are in serious trouble. Half of them are in some trouble, and only a fifth, 1 in every 5, is doing okay. So I think this is pretty desperate.
It is desperate. And the 1/3 that are in serious trouble,
yes.
Forgive me for forcing the point here, but are some of them at risk of extinction?
Well, that's really what it means. I mean, it means under threat of extinction, really. Not necessarily imminently, but means they're in low numbers, often declining. So the risk just grows.
And what species are you most concerned about?
Well, I can give you some examples of some that are in serious trouble. And these are ones that are endemic to New Zealand. They're not found anywhere else in the world. So the kea, the world's only mountain parrot. The wryebill, which is one of my favourites I discovered during this investigation, lives in the braided rivers of the South Island.
Yes.
The whio, the duck, that's really a whitewater kayaker, the blue duck. The wandering albatross is another one. The Fiordland crested penguin is another one. The takahi is another one. So there are, in total, in that serious trouble category, I think 54 different species.
Right. How urgent is the need to respond to their predicament?
Well, I think it is very urgent. The most urgent thing to do is around predators. So the government, in a way, has got it right with setting the predator-free 2050 goal. And in a way, it's less about 2050 than it is about really focusing us on predators now, because it's not just possums, rats and stoats, it's feral cats, wild cats out there, and other things like ferrets and weasels and so on, hedgehogs, all kinds of things that are eating our birds and eating their eggs.
Do the people who are caring for these birds, who are charged with trying to prevent their extinction, have enough money to do so?
Well, I'm saying we need a lot more money, because we need to be creating large areas on the mainland where we keep the predators really low, and areas that can support larger populations of birds. Because one of the things that's come through very clearly to me in this report is that we've put our birds on offshore islands for good reason, because we were able to clear them of predators and make them safe. We've put some in mainland sanctuaries, and they're good, and they're helping everyone understand it. And then there's more in remnants of habitat. And so a lot of them are in isolated small populations where they risk losing their genetic diversity.
Yes,
so
and that was the thing. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm really struck by the fact that there are very small gene pools now, and that is entirely problematic for a species.
Well, yes, that's right. Depends which species you're talking about, and we don't know how diverse they are in many cases. We do know about the kakapo because, of course, that's been exhaustively studied, and they are all so similar to each other that, if a disease comes along that one of them falls prey to, the rest would probably follow. So that you lose the resilience. They also struggle to breed. They suffer from what's called inbreeding depression. So I'm saying that's a bird at the bottom of the cliff. We haven't brought it back from the brink of extinction. It continues to teeter on the brink of extinction. And we don't want other birds getting into that state.
And how do we stop that from happening, given the urgency of this?
Large areas where you can have larger populations of birds, moving birds around that have come from different parts of the country, so their genetics are a little different, their genomes are a little different. Restoring habitat is a whole heap of things in the report, but the big immediate one really is predators, and getting predators down to low levels on bigger areas of land.
One suggestion is for a tourist tax to raise money to invest it in retrieving these birds from the brink of extinction. That's something you support, isn't it?
I've suggested it be investigated. I know that some people argue for it and some people argue against it. I think it's well worth doing. What I'm struck by, John, is overseas people charge for things. Someone told me yesterday that they'd done a 2-hour walk in Italy and had to pay a significant number of dollars to be allowed to do that. So, you know, we can, I believe, get a lot more money off our tourists, and I believe we should, because that's why they come here. They come because you've seen pictures of our national parks. I don't see why they shouldn't help contribute directly to support them. And I think they mostly do it gladly. Put a bird stamp on their passport.
I'm trying to scan you.
Yeah.
How do you know about it?
That's Dr. Jan Wright, who is the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, talking to us a short time ago. The other big report today that was issued, of course, was the Auditor General's report into the care of people discharged from or who have gone from the country's mental health inpatient facilities and hospitals and who are still in need of mental health care. Karen Brown, our health reporter, filed on that earlier. That piece is now online. We did put in a bid for the Health Minister to join us, but once again, he wasn't available. The country's biggest employer, the Defence Forces, announced it plans to be the first military to stub out smoking completely, aiming to be smoke-free in 3 years' time. New Zealand has the 7th lowest smoking rate out of 30 OECD countries, with 18% of adults lighting up, down from 21% a decade ago. The government's goal, make the country smoke-free by 2025, but Mana Party leader Hone Harawira says that's just a pipe dream. Te Manu Korihi reporter Shannon Haunui-Thompson has this report.
Vicky Makutu is the mother of 3.5-month-old Tai Matahai Pātea. She found it easy to quit smoking when she was pregnant with the help of Quitline, but she restarted once her baby was born.
When I just found out I was pregnant, I knew I couldn't just do it on my own, and I rang up Quitline, and they sent me heaps of stuff, and they would always text me like once every 2 days just to see how I was going, and they'd do follow-up calls and all of that. And they're really the reason why I actually was able to quit while I was pregnant.
Vicky started out as a social smoker, but has been smoking full-time for the last 3 years.
Everybody around me was smoking, and it just became a habit. Like my family started smoking all the time, and they'd be outside, you know, having fun smoking, and I'd be inside, the only one inside not smoking. And then I just slowly started making my way outside and then just joining in with everybody else. It's really stupid when I say that out loud.
Vicky isn't alone. There are approximately 650,000 smokers in New Zealand. The government's goal is for New Zealand to be smoke-free by 2025. And 7 years ago, recommendations were made by the Maori Affairs Select Committee to help achieve this goal. But Mana Party leader Hone Harawira, who was on that committee, says the government has ignored the recommendations and backed e-cigarettes instead.
You know, there's no qualitative evidence that e-cigarettes have any genuine impact on people's health. There's no qualitative evidence on the reduction factor or on the possible addiction factor of e-cigarettes, given that they are now being bought up by big tobacco.
The New Zealand Defence Force announced today it wants to be the first smoke-free military by 2020, including in its military housing. It intends to ban the sale of cigarettes on camps and bases, as well as making the housing it provides to Defence Force members and their families smoke-free. The Defence Force says the next step will be to make all camps and bases smoke-free and support quit smoking initiatives. The Health Minister, Jonathan Coleman, backs that move.
Well, I think it'll be an interesting change in the culture, but I think it's a good thing.
However, New Zealand First Deputy Leader and former soldier Ron Mark questions why the policy would be extended beyond Defence Force staff.
I'm led to believe that it also includes their military housing where the families are located, and that also includes their spouses, partners, children. I didn't know that the contracts between Defence Force personnel and the NZDEF had extended that deeply into their families.
Back in Whanganui, Vicky Makutu and her whānau are trying to quit once and for all after her father-in-law was diagnosed with cancer.
We've made our house smoke-free, so no one's allowed to smoke around the house. We have to go right up the street if we want to have a cigarette. And that started because he couldn't breathe. And that was kind of like our idea of deterring us to go outside. You know, because we have to walk all the way up the road.
and it's slowly deterring us.
But public health researchers say smokers aren't stubbing out fast enough. Professor Richard Edwards from the Achieving a Smoke-Free Aotearoa project says smoking trends suggest that the goal of reducing prevalence to below 5% by 2025 is not on track and will be missed by a wide margin for Maori and Pacific peoples. Mo te hōtaka o te ahiahi nei, ko Shannon Haunui-Thompson, aho.
Breaking news just coming in from Afghanistan. At least 9 people, in fact, new estimates say 15 people have been killed and more than 300 wounded after a huge car bomb exploded in the capital, Kabul. The Australian and German embassies, the Foreign Ministry and the Presidential Palace are all in the area. Some reports say it's very near the German embassy. Witnesses say they can see crowds gathered around ambulances that are carrying the dead and wounded to hospitals, trying desperately to identify those killed and injured. RNZ will have more on this story. The death toll already as high as 15 and expected to rise a lot, 300 injured in Kabul. Home again, there is a new biosecurity outbreak, this time a parasite that could threaten the legendary bluff oyster. The Ministry for Primary Industries is already struggling to deal with Myrtle Rust, as we heard earlier in the program. Officials warning that the pohutakawa could be one of the worst affected plants. Late this afternoon, MPI confirmed that it has found the infection Bonamia austriae in 2 flat oyster farms at Big Glory Bay at Stewart Island. The infectious organism is not harmful to people, but could devastate the region's flat oyster industry, as a related strain of Bonamia did in the early 1990s and the early 2000s. The Ministry's Biosecurity Surveillance Manager, Brendan Gould, told our reporter Ian Telford they made the find last Tuesday.
Well, we've had a detection up in Marlborough for a couple of years now, and we've been looking to contain that. And as part of that program, one of our objectives was to try and limit the spread so it didn't get into any other locations, which is why this is particularly bad news. But as part of that, we've run a surveillance program around those areas, actively looking for this, and that's what found this particular find down south.
So how much of a threat is it?
It's pretty serious, but we don't really know what impact it's going to have, particularly in the wild fishery. We do have experience of another Bonamia species down there, which has had a huge impact on the fishery. Whether this, further compounds that, we don't really know, but we are aware it has significant impact on farmed flat oysters. It's fairly lethal.
We're going to hear from Sam Warburton, the Lions skipper, in a moment. He's just holding a media conference. But before that, recently I received a phone call at home from a man offering to fix my computer. Some of you will have heard from the same kind of caller. Sergeant Tristan Murray received one too at his desk at work, the Papamoa police station. And realising it was a scammer, Sergeant Murray, not a policeman for nothing, recorded it.
I'm trying to scam you.
Yeah.
How do you know about it? How are you sure?
Do you know you've rung the New Zealand Police?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're trying to scam the New Zealand...
Yeah, that wasn't very nice. Police put the recording on their Facebook page, and now hundreds of thousands of people have listened to a scammer very unsuccessfully trying to scam a cop. But whilst there's an element of absurdity about all of this, as Sergeant Murray told us, if you weren't sure about computers and prone to believing what you were told by someone who phoned you at home, you could potentially do what the scammer was asking.
Oh, absolutely you could, yeah. And I mean, he did have that sort of voice that you do come across when you ring call centres. There was a significant amount of background noise which sort of linked to the fact that it was a call centre as well. So, yeah, there were elements of it that would easily fool people, and that was my concern, and that's why I immediately started recording it, just so I could use it as a prevention message.
And what he was trying to do was get you to log in. What would have happened next?
Well, there's a number of possibilities, John. He was getting me to log into a legitimate site which allows remote access. So it's not a site that the scammers are running. It's a genuine site which allows you to remote access other people's computers. And then from there, it's anyone's guess what he may have done. He may have infected the computer with a virus and then held me to ransom to clean up that virus, or he might have locked the computer, with the same goal in mind, that I pay him money to have my computer unlocked. Or he might even genuinely put a virus in there, clean it up, and then say, hey, I need your credit card details, seeing as I've cleaned up your computer, and then cleaned out your credit card, or likewise with your bank account. you could go into your bank account online while he's watching. And they have software which can see what keys you push, for your passwords, etc., and they can clean you out that way. So really there's a heck of a lot of different ways that they can rip you off.
So if you just followed that one instruction to go to the address he gave you, then potentially he was in your computer. It's that simple.
Potentially he was, yes.
And so the message is, when in doubt, hang up.
Absolutely it is, yep. Getting phone calls from a stranger trying to do anything of such nature and trying to remotely access your computer or trying to solicit any of your personal details, warning bells should start to ring and you should discontinue the call immediately.
Yeah. I guess, though, there will be people who aren't very familiar with the ways of computer companies, right? And they might think, isn't that nice? Microsoft are giving me a call. There will be people who are vulnerable to these kind of approaches.
Yes, and that's why I'm pleased that this has reached out to so many people because if we can prevent it, it'll save all that heartache. It's pretty much when these phone calls are coming from overseas, it's almost impossible to investigate it from New Zealand.
And did the number come up on your phone? You said it did, so you knew it was coming from overseas. What country was it?
I probably can't say because there's probably some ongoing investigations behind the scenes in regards to that. But what I can say is that these phone calls can come from any region in the world. So it's never one particular country. They can come from all over the place.
So I can guess that you have passed the number back to your equivalents, to police officers in the country where the call came from?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I've reported the matter, yes.
Okay. Well, we hope that fellow is getting a visit as we speak.
Yes, that would be very delightful, but I guess my main goal is just to make sure that people don't become a victim, and particularly our vulnerable members of the society and our elderly who, they grow up in a generation where you can trust people.
That was Sergeant Tristan Murray, and he is based at the Papamoa Police Station where that scammer called 6:25. After a 12-year wait, the British and Irish Lions have returned to New Zealand, so they only ever tour. They never play at home, this team. The 41-strong squad touched down at Auckland Airport just after midday today and were welcomed with a porphyry inside the terminal before being greeted by dozens of fans at the arrival gate. The team, dubbed the best side assembled in recent memories, has just held its first press conference at Auckland's Pullman Hotel ahead of their first match against the Barbarians, which is up in Whangarei on Saturday night. Captain Sam Warburton and manager John Spencer have just spoken. Our sports reporter Matt Chatterton is there and joins us now live on the phone. Hi Matt, you there?
Sure am, John. How are you?
Yeah, good. Sam Warburton is an impressive character and has been named captain for obvious reasons. How was he in the media conference?
Yeah, certainly impressive, all right. God, he's got arms the size of tree trunks. He's a big man, old Sam. No, he was good. They seemed relatively upbeat, given they just got off, a flight over from Australia this afternoon. But they were in good spirits, talking about, how getting this series off to a good start up against the Barbarians in Whangarei on Saturday. And they will, in fact, name their team for that match tomorrow at 7 a.m. So they're just about to go have a meeting about who's going to be playing in that very match.
Gosh, this is fascinating. That's, with all due respect to the Barbarians, that's very much the easiest game on their tour on paper, right? They're playing all the super franchises. They're playing the Maori All Blacks, and they're playing 3 games against the All Blacks. This is a hell of a tough tour, isn't it?
It sure is, and what better way for the tour to start than Warren Gatlin's side faces son, and Bryn Gatlin is playing his first 5 for the Barbarians. So it promises to be a great story out of that game. And actually Sam Warburton even mentioned in there that majority of the Welsh players in that team know Bryn from a very young age when he was kicking goals with the Wales team back when Warren was in charge. So it's a lovely story.
Yes, Warren was former Welsh coach, right? So Bryn would have been very much there as a young boy at the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
When I was a kid, the Lions went everywhere. I mean, they played games. I remember them training at my school, and it was the most wondrous and exciting thing. This is now very much a super franchise tour, isn't it? They're staying in the main centres, except for this trip to Whangarei and the trip to Rotorua for the Maori game. And so this Whangarei occasion will be rather special on Saturday night, won't it?
It sure will. It'll sort of give back, I guess, to the heartland communities, which I guess, probably, feel as though they were a bit hard done by not getting any, regional games. But in this day and age, the professional day and age, that's how things are. And what better way to prepare for a 3-test series against the All Blacks than playing Super Rugby sides, which you would almost argue are the closest thing to a test match in World Rugby.
Yeah, Matt, for people who are listening who just think this is just another rugby game, why are the Lions so important? Why is this tour so eagerly awaited? Why are people paying up to $440, and that's before the tickets have ended up on the black market, to go and see them play the All Blacks?
Well, funnily enough, John, I think you can answer that question after what you were telling me today. You were dead right. There's no real other moment in sport or series in sport where 4 nations come together that normally play against each other, join forces, and then try to take on another region in that region's, or that country's rather, own backyard. They never play at home. It's a wonderful series.
Yeah, it certainly is, and their fans are, I think, some of the greatest fans in sport, and they travel with them and they sing and they make our stadiums come alive, because we can be pretty quiet, can't we, as supporters?
We can. There's 20,000 of them coming out, in fact, so there's going to be a good contingent of Lions supporters of Barmy Army here,
Yeah, just before we go, Matt, how are they going to go, the Lions? This is a strong team, but beating the All Blacks at home isn't easy.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think it definitely won't be what we saw in 2005. I think there'll be a game in it each after the first 2 games. I think it'll come down to a third decider. Obviously, being in New Zealand, they've got to back the All Blacks, but it promises to be a very, very, very good series.
The Lions in the country. Matt Chatterton has just been at the media conference. Despite, we're going to end tonight, someone says Kofefi isn't news. Donald Trump tweeted it, and Donald Trump managed to become president of the United States on the basis, at least in part, of his extraordinary use of social media. It's now been retweeted 71,000 times, despite the constant negative press. Kofefi, you okay, Donald? No one puts Kofefi in the corner. You win the internet tonight. Free Kofefi for the press corp tomorrow. Are you good at anything? Kofefi, take 1 to 2 daily to prevent tantrums. Excellent. Good evening.
RNZ News headlines now at 6:30. A large blaze at a refuge transfer station at Henderson in West Auckland has been controlled. A manhunt is underway for 3 armed robbers who held up a South Auckland bar for cash. Shots were fired, but no one was hurt. The Auditor-General says urgent changes are needed to improve the way mental health patients are discharged from hospital. At least 15 people have been killed and as many as 300 injured in a massive suicide car bomb blast outside the German embassy in Kabul. The death toll is expected to rise. The Environment Watchdog is calling for tourism taxes and a public discussion about genetic modification to control predators and tackle the country's declining bird population. And the head of a penal reform group says a new plan to help young Maori get their driver's licence may keep them out of prison. Our next news and weather will be at 7.
This week on Inside Out, I'm previewing the amazing Wellington Jazz Festival happening from the 7th